Welcome and thanks for joining us. My guest today is Casey Coleman, the Senior Vice President for Global Public Sector Digital Transformation at Salesforce. Casey, good to have you back.
Thank you, Tom. Great to see you.
And in thinking about cloud and tactical help for warfighters in the DoD and all of these topics, let's back up and tell us what you are hearing from the SaaS, software as a service vendor standpoint, to many DoD component agencies. What are they telling you? What are their problems? What are they trying to solve these days?
Well, thanks, Tom. My team and I and our group works with government customers across the U.S. government, DoD, federal, civilian, and then globally with governments around the world. And there's some really consistent themes that I hear over and over again when it comes to their mission and enabling their mission with cloud solutions. The first is fast time to value. It's not enough time to pause and take a break from the work of the mission and then go hope that you can deliver something in 18 months or 2 years. The world is just not, that's not how things are operating. So you need agile capabilities that can be delivered quickly, that can be layered in and improved upon with deeper functionality over time. So that rapid time to value and iterative capability deployment is the first real consistent trend. And the second is fit for purpose capabilities. As cloud has matured over the years, we've moved from more of an infrastructure as a service as kind of the foundational piece, still a very important part of the whole architecture. But as you said, software as a service capabilities that are fit for purpose, that serve those core horizontal functional capabilities like HR, financial management, logistics, sustainment, those kind of horizontal capabilities, fit for purpose, ready to go, goes hand in hand with fast time to value.
Because we hear the term customer experience a lot and employee experience. And in this context, yes, you want things to be happy for employees, but really employee experience sounds like is just making almost the software functions that they need for their missions to disappear in a sense, so that they can concentrate fully on the work and not thinking about the software application itself. Is that a good way to put it?
That is a good way to put it. There's really two trends at play here with the whole HR experience and looking after the workforce and the employees. The first is that the government is competing for talent with the private sector, and you need to create an experience that you can recruit, you can retain, you can rapidly onboard, and then you can continue to provide HR services that really take care of employees so that they can take care of the mission. And that's the second piece of it. Every minute spent on swivel chairing data from one system to another or re-entering information into one form after another because the government's got 3 forms to do one thing, that just takes time away from getting the job done. And so there's a recruiting and retainment piece, and then there's an HR services and eliminating the friction so that the mission can be executed.
And this kind of approach applies to the total force too, doesn't it? Not just the active duty people.
Oh, absolutely. It's civilian, it's uniformed personnel, and then it's partners, the partner ecosystem as well, because it's a total force concept, and the employee experience pertains to all of them, because the employees who are engaged and who have the tools they need to get the job done do a better job.
And talk about self-service and process automation, all of those things that take away maybe personnel that may be redeployed for other purposes, and also taking away just the drudgery and, as you say, the swivel chair type of activities that can be just programmed out of it altogether.
Yeah, I was struck by the comments from Dr. Taylor's segment just before this, where he was talking about efficiencies and taking cost out. And one way to get about that is self-service and putting tools in people's hands to do the job themselves from a mobile device. For example, we work with one large defense customer who has put their fitness evaluations online so that people can record their fitness results themselves. Another has set up self-service for looking at the billets that you want to apply for in your next post. And so it's no longer a serial process where you're having to work with one opportunity at a time, but you can see and plan your career with tools that online that give you that visibility. And when you do that, you not only improve the experience, but you also can retain people better, and you are able to not have to rely on so much on agents, call center agents or customer service representatives who do the work, but you can start to let them focus on the more complex inquiries and let people take care of the more standalone requests themselves.
Right. And I guess that approach can also move upstream. As you mentioned, people can manage their own careers, manage their own even next billets and this kind of thing. But at the same time, the agency, the management can do its talent management in a much more expeditious way.
Yeah, talent, again, I go back to my point about the public sector competing for talent with the commercial industry. People have choices, and they're going to go to the job that really gives them the opportunities that they're looking for. And so talent management is a concept of not just getting your first job, but then planning and managing your career and the opportunities and the ongoing training. And in the military, the schools that you apply to, being able to see what options are available and being able to then take a longer term view so that you can think not just about this assignment, but more broadly. And then from a leadership perspective, being able to understand total force and what skills you have, what skills you need to be training for and developing for, and then preparing for meeting the mission now and in the future.
And do you get the sense, or you may even have metrics, that people in such an environment might be more satisfied with their jobs, might be more enthusiastic about their jobs, and in some way that translates into better mission support ultimately for the people on the front lines, that many of these mid-office or back office, the so-called tail part, can support the tooth better?
That's a good way to put it. The study after study has shown, and we see this in the research studies, we see it in the surveys that the government does about best places to work and job satisfaction, employee viewpoint surveys. All of it points to more engaged employees being more committed to the work that they're doing. And again, they're able to do the work and they're not spending their time on administrative tasks and tools and re-entering data from system to system.
And that gets to the question of human-centered design. And I mean, in some sense, there's always been an interface between software and people, and whether it was a green screen or you push a mouse around and a cursor around, but human-centered design seems to take it to a different level. Maybe describe what that is and why DoD organizations find it important now, not just something nice to have.
Any of us who are involved in the public sector, or myself having been in the federal government for many years, we all know the government has a lot of systems. They've got very bureaucratic and structured ways of doing work. And those systems and those processes are organized from the inside out, according to how the organization is set up, how the funding was delivered, how the systems were coded years ago. And that inside out view just makes it hard. Everyone has to navigate around the systems and do the work of the tools instead of the tools doing the work for them. And so human-centered design is flipping that around and starting from the outside in, starting with the user, whether that's a uniformed personnel or employee, whether it's a customer of some sort, depending on the agency, but then designing the processes so that they are capturing information across systems and working across organizational boundaries, connecting the dots, making it easy and making it mobile, making it secure, and connecting the data so that you have the information you need pre-filled and saving time and frustration.
And determining that customer expectation for that human-centered design that is the output of this work. I mean, there is no single type of customer. You might have 30-year veteran employees in the civilian side working in the Pentagon, working in a depot somewhere. And then you've got young airmen, soldiers, Air Force members, Marines, Guardians now on the field. You have different genders, you have different racial makeup. So how do you know what is a customer when you're thinking in terms of customer experience or employee experience?
Well, there are best practices and there are standards. This is a maturing area, but if you think about commercial systems that we all use, there are commonalities that you see over and over again. They're personalized. They know what transactions you've had in the past with them, whether it's buying something online or shopping or connecting with people on social media. You pick up where you left off last time. And so that personalized nature, the ability to just use it without a lot of training, these things are common regardless of the nature of the person using them. And so those kind of concepts translate into the cloud solutions that we're bringing to our customers and that we're seeing have traction in the market, especially when it comes to things like employee experience and employee tools.
And does the idea of, say, mass customization, that's probably not the best word for it, come into here? Earlier, you mentioned about agile capabilities that can be layered on so that as you learn more about how people are interacting with the system, it can be adjusted to make it more efficient for them, and you can see what they're doing and measure it that way. At the same time, people might want to just configure an existing system in a way that suits them best, even though they're doing the same job as someone on either side of them that might have a slightly different configuration, as long as the job output is the same or what's required. Is that part of this human design thinking, is configurability for individuals, as well as constant feedback loop to change capabilities and improve them for everybody?
Yes, absolutely. And this brings together a lot of the things we've been talking about, the idea of mass customization, because if you have an agile system that is cloud-based, that is configured and not coded, you can very rapidly add options in a pull-down list, change the workflow, bring in an integration through an API to get data from a new system. And you can flex and evolve the system and make it work in different ways for different people, but still maintain that common data structure and underlying platform that you can reuse over and over again. And by taking this approach, you can give different groups the look and feel that they want. We work with customers for all kinds of government missions, for doing emergency loans, for doing homeless and housing shelter options, for doing things like small business support and support to families across every mission you can imagine across the government and in the DoD and civilian agencies.
Right. So that makes your users more than just consumers of what it is that the programmers and the program owners put out, but really, rather than have them create workarounds, they become partners in further development so that what they feel could improve their work is not just something they have to engineer themselves, but something that someone's listening to and incorporate that into either the configuration or the basic design of the application.
Yeah, and the best practice really is to have a partnership between the mission, the business, the program, and the IT organization. And those who are closest to the edge are the ones who know best what needs to be done. And again, if you have an agile system, you can respond to that through capabilities that can be fielded in days or weeks, not months or years. And you can continue to make sure that the system remains relevant to the end users and it works for them rather than they having to work for it.
So it's really a new way of thinking about change management, isn't it?
Yeah, change management is at the heart of it, because the greatest system in the world still has to be adopted and used. And again, it's a partnership and it's an ongoing education process.
All right. I wanted to ask you about the concept of digital threads and as a basis for collaboration, both within the government and back and forth within people that are far flung as they are in the Defense Department, but also between the Defense Department components and industry. So what is it? Let's start with a digital thread, and what is it and how does it apply here?
The concept of digital thread comes from this situation we've been discussing, where you have legacy systems that are, it really is oriented in a manufacturing world, but it applies everywhere. You've got a system for designing the capabilities. Oftentimes it's a system for the Defense Department. Then you've got some kind of a delivery and manufacturing system. Then you've got a sustainment and break fix environment. Those historically have been for different programs and different teams, and they haven't been connected. And a digital thread pulls that asset, that physical configuration and the digital representation of it all the way through. So you can see all the way to the end and see where, if something's breaking or there's a higher than expected maintenance situation, then you can look all the way back to the designed environment and see if there's some design change that needs to be factored into production and then into maintenance. And that same thread applies throughout any process that involves multiple organizations. No government office works in isolation. Everyone has to collaborate with their peers upstream and downstream. And being able to do that collaboratively and bridge those organizational boundaries and bridge those system boundaries is really what we're helping our customers to do, is to do that work seamlessly.
So in many ways, the thread is like a source of truth available to many people along the chain here, from supplier to end user. And so the cloud becomes the logical place for that thread to be maintained and accessed and used and updated.
It really only can be done through cloud systems, because legacy stovepipe systems don't have the agility and the flexibility, the ongoing innovation, the commercial capabilities that are built for every customer and shared.
Because Salesforce has something called the front door framework, and I think of that almost like creating an ecosystem among stakeholders in a given property or a given piece of equipment or different service that DoD might be buying and then deploying in that whole chain. It seems like it becomes more of an environment than a discrete chains of events that don't talk to one another.
Yeah, and we were talking a moment ago about user-centered design. A front door concept is something a lot of agencies are moving to meet their employees and those they serve where they are, and not requiring them to understand the intricacies of how the bureaucracy is structured and the systems may have been set up years ago, but putting a front engagement layer on all of those systems and processes so that there is an easy entry point. There's no wrong door. You can come and get the service you need, regardless of how the back end and the work actually gets delivered.
And how does this all involve the procurement and acquisition function? The contracting staff and contracting officers, they're kind of in the middle of this whole chain thread.
Yeah, we work with a lot of procurement financial organizations to transform the work they're doing, because they too are employees who have a lot of tools to deal with and need to have them connected, have that legacy data integrated, have the visualization of the information to be able to look at it from different angles and at different layers of leadership, and being able to do that in a way that is flexible and iterative, regardless of the mission, with capabilities that are fit for their purpose. So if it's a procurement officer, it might be managing the market research and the engagement with industry. A lot of organizations, a lot of government agencies are reaching out to industry to see what innovation is taking place. They want to track that, and they want to be able to filter that and then put that into the different missions that might be able to use it. And that's one use case we see in a lot of different agencies.
And maybe discuss how that looks from the standpoint of those people on the tactical edge, the warfighters, and they're looking at their systems. They know what supplies they need. They know what things may not be working as well as anticipated that could use a little tweaking, this kind of thing. That's that whole idea of, delivery at the speed of need. And there's different variations on that phrase. Maybe imagine for us for a moment how that looks from that frontline standpoint, looking back at that thread that goes all the way back to a supplier.
So imagine that you've got a mobile device, and from that mobile device, you have access to all the services you need at the edge. You've got HR services, so the ability to check on your pay, the ability to make sure that things like your children's school assignments and the spousal and family support environment is being delivered back home, being able to plan your next training and the next school assignment that you're going to apply for. So the range of services that apply to the whole person and to the family. And then other services that pertain to the job to be done, things like reordering supplies or being able to track the status of something you've already ordered. So, it's not lost in the queue and you have visibility through the end-to-end process. And all of this can be accessed through that single front door we were talking about. This is not an imaginary capability. Tools and systems have reached the ability to deliver on the promise we've long been seeking.
All right. So you've done a great job of tying all of this to the procurement function. You've done a great job of tying this all to the function that we're all serving there on the front line, the tactical people. Let's talk about the information technology staff, because DoD is looking at cloud instances across the board. There's so many initiatives, it's hard to keep track of them all. But many of those are simply infrastructure as a service, Salesforce being software as a service. How do you fit in with what might be overarching cloud strategies with multi-cloud providers? And there's still, the need for, in the eyes of many DoD organizations, their own data centers still.
The thing I love about Salesforce is that we run on public cloud infrastructure. So commercial infrastructure as a service providers provide the underlying Hyperforce layer. And so we can go where they are. And the legacy systems that sit in a data center are accessible to us and through the processes that we can bring that data in through APIs, provide the visualization, provide the collaboration, and be able to provide a fully fit for purpose capability that is able to be delivered in days or weeks. We've seen this through the pandemic with vaccine systems and contact tracing systems that were fielded in days. And then subsequently, as there have been conflicts around the world and people have migrated and refugees have flown across national borders, the ability to be able to set up systems to receive them and take care of them upon their arrival has been another use case that's been common in Europe in recent months. And so that all comes together in a software as a service environment.
So a software as a service environment then can, through APIs and maybe some other technical means, actually take advantage of what might be a legacy application on a mainframe somewhere, or an application that's just simply hosted in a cloud somewhere, any one of several clouds, but yet that can be abstracted so that to the SaaS application, it's all there logically.
Absolutely. It's no data is off limits anymore. It's kind of mind-blowing what can be done now, because we've had to live within the constraints of old architectures and old system coding parameters that have just kind of forced us into a certain way of working that's really not optimal. And so now we can break those boundaries, we can liberate that information, and we can use it in ways that serve the mission and no longer just feed the system.
All right. Anything else we need to know? What's going to be happening later in 23 and beyond, do you think, in this whole cloud and SaaS world?
Well, we're seeing a lot of developments in continuing innovation around things like artificial intelligence, more and more innovation in specific industries like public sector, where there's deeper capabilities coming out that serve the public sector. And as you know, government is an industry of industries. So the innovation that's happening in the healthcare industry or the financial services industry, we're taking that and bringing it into our customers' environments for their functions that are health oriented or grants or loans or financial oriented and so forth.
Sounds like all those threads are really coming into a tapestry.
Exactly. I love that.
All right. I want to thank today's guest. Casey Coleman is the Senior Vice President for Global Public Sector Digital Transformation at Salesforce. And I'm Tom Temin. You're listening to Federal News Network. Let's go back to the studio now for more on the DoD Cloud Exchange.